Hey, this is Rich over at TVP Live with another quick tips tutorials brought to you by Photoshop Elements Custom Tutorials Group. And let's jump right into today's poster. I wanted to know how to take the photo of this girl. Now, I added the face. The poster actually put a big smiley face to cover the face. So this face is fake. It's AI. Anyway, so what the poster wanted to do was to take this girl and put it onto this background. Now, we have a couple issues to begin with. Is this background is not real. This is a fake AI background. As you zoom in, you can see it's really pixelated, and this is not a real studio. So the perspective is a little bit off. We'll fix that later on. So let's go back to the girl, and now we got a couple issues. Is the quality of this photo is so low because either the camera was set low or the lens was dirty or whatnot. When you zoom in, you're going to see how these lines are really blurred. So whenever you try to cut this image out, you're going to see that there's no way to decipher where to cut, especially if you're using one of the tools that Photoshop Elements has. Like, let's say if we use the eraser tool, come down and pick the magic eraser. And let's say the tolerance, let's set it at like 50%. I'm going to zoom out so we see what happens. And I'm going to go ahead and click with that magic eraser right here. And what happened was part of the background is so fuzzy that it thinks that the leg is part of the background. So let's go ahead and undo that. That means we have to take this tolerance here and lessen it to something like, let's say 40%, and try it again. And it's really jaggedy. See that? And that happens when the lines are really low resolution and they're fuzzy, and it leaves this kind of white edge. And what happens is if you try to bring that picture into the background layer, which is right here. Now, that's another thing, is how do you bring this picture into this layer? There's two ways to do it. The wrong way is to take this layer and to cut or copy or drag it over to the new layer and let go. What happens is it lowers the resolution. You want to keep that picture looking like a PNG. So what we do is we stick on this background, come down here to photo bin, and then we drag the other picture of the girl up and into the photo. When I let go, boom. Now it's actually higher resolution, albeit the lines here are still a little fuzzy. So the harder, better way would be to actually take an eraser and carefully cut her out, and then take the polygon tool and cut her out. But we're going to go ahead and use this technique, which was the magic eraser, and it took her out pretty good. A little bit rough on the edges, but it's not too bad. Now, we still have these little extra spaces here to take out. So what I'm going to do is, because they're smaller, and I'm going to click there, but it's telling us that we have to simplify the layer. When we brought it in from the photo bin, it brought it in as a vector. So we need to simplify the image so it's a raster. So we'll hit OK, and that fixed it. Now we can click on these and erase the little portions that should be erased. So now what's happening is the girl has three things going on. She's the wrong size for the perspective of this photo. And then the way she's standing, her back leg is flat on the ground and her front leg is bent forward with her toes on the ground, but her back of her foot is lifting up. So if there were shadows, that's the second thing, is there's no shadows that we have to add, that they would reflect depending on how she's standing. So first let's go with the actual size. So let's put her down on the floor where she needs to be, right around here. Now her size is too big for this background, so I'm going to take the top left corner and drag her down to where she looks natural in this setting, depending on the size of the background. So what looks natural? And I think that's right around there. That looks good. And the only thing now I think is to change the perspective just slightly. So I'm going to take that background, I'm going to unlock it, and I'm going to raise it up by holding the shift and the up button a few times, right around like that. And then I'm going to cut the background off. What I'm going to do is stretch that bottom piece to look a little bit more realistic. So I'm going to cut it off at that line where the background meets the wall. I'm going to right click and I'm going to hit copy. And that made a copy of just that bottom piece. Make sure we grab that bottom piece and let's elongate it. I'm going to grab the square here and drag it down like that. That gives us a little bit more background, and that's what it should look like. Then we want to stretch it out so it's a little bit more distorted, or actually perspective wise. So if we go up here to image, transform, and perspective, then we can take one of the side bottom corners and either go in, see what happens, or out. And if I go out, it starts to stretch the very bottom edge of the photo so it looks like it's more stretched out, like a real perspective of a floor. And hit OK. And now it's starting to look more like a real floor there because there's a definite separation of the perspective. So I can take that floor, right click, and I can hit merge it down. And there's our floor. Now let's start working with shadows. If her foot is on the floor here, and this foot is flat on the floor, we got like several different types of shadows that we can work with, and we just use layers to do them. So I'm going to put a layer between the background and her image. I'm going to click on the background layer and come up here to the layers button, click once. That gives us one free layer. Come over here to the color palette, click it. Let's choose pure black. So I take this circle and drag it to the far bottom left right there. That is pure black where this says 000. I'll hit OK. Grab a brush, come down here and choose a soft brush. The brushes from the top, if you scroll up, start with thin, hard brushes. They're all hard until you scroll down and you start to see the soft brushes. So let's pick a nice big one. Let's try 27. Come over here. See, that's a little bit small, so I can change it up here and just type in, let's say, 50 pixels. And that looks good to begin with. I'm going to zoom in so we can work with this really tight and close. And the first set of shadows is going to be the harsh black shadows that you'd naturally see. And you see, look at, as I'm drawing this, it's going right along the edge on the inside, underneath edge. And this is going to make it look like a real person is standing there. Now remember, back here, her back of her foot, the ball of her heel is standing up. So in that case, you would actually naturally see a little bit more of a shadow. I'll do the same thing with this one. I'll do a little bit less because she's actually flat-footed on this one. And not too much on the far side, just a tiny bit like that. And maybe click it right there. Now you see this little white line? That's because we had used the eraser tool and it didn't get the edges really good. So what we can do is fix that. We can click on her image, which is this layer, take an eraser. I'm going to get in really close and let's make this a soft eraser brush, 10 points. And basically hand draw and cut off that white portion. I can click, hold the shift and click to do lines at a time like this. And see what I'm doing? Or I can just freehand it. I'm cutting off all the white. Now look at the difference between this left side doesn't have any white edges that this right side is. So if you were trying to make shadows before and found them to look fake, this might be one of the reasons. And that's what happens when you cut out a subject that's of low resolution and you try to cut them out using one of the magic tools. The magic tool doesn't know where the background ends and where the subject actually starts very well. And it ends up leaving you a little bit of that background. And you really don't want to see that because that's a telltale sign that it looks fake. I can come back a little bit and take that shadow and let's bring that from 100% down to, and watch what happens. Watch the shadow. See that? I can turn it down to 0, bring it up a little bit, and I like it here right at about 50%. And I can turn that layer on and off to see the difference. So that's a beginning. Now let's do another layer. So all we do is hit the layer button. It gives us the second free layer. We're going to do another shadow that's almost the same but a lot bigger. So we take the brush and instead of 50 point, let's try, I don't know, let's say 500 point. And just do a blob. Boom. There you go. That's a blob. Now we come to the smudge tool and let's make that a lot bigger, something like 250 pixels, and drag that shadow out as it naturally would be if a person was really standing there. See, this reflects that her shoulders come out to about here. So I want to bring that shadow about the same distance of her shoulders. And of course it's going to look too harsh because we haven't softened the opacity yet. So I'm going to back out a little bit and Let's try just taking that down to 50%. Change that from 100 to 50. And I can toggle that on and off. That's looking pretty good. I think it's a little harsh. Let's change that to 40%. Boom. And that's looking pretty good. If we toggle this layer on and off, you can see how that's looking really good. And then finally, I think the background in itself, it's a great background, but it's kind of bland. So we're going to change it a little bit so that it looks a little more realistic. I'm going to right click and duplicate that background and then turn off the bottom layer, grab the top layer of that background, come up here to enhance, lighting, and brightness. And let's darken the whole edges. Take the contrast down, see what happens. I can bring the contrast up or down, and then I can bring the actual light down like that. I like these both right at 50%. So I did the contrast minus 50 and the brightness minus 50. Here's the before and after. Now you think that's the way it's going to finish? Heck no. Watch this. Because we still have the bright version of the background underneath, I'm going to turn that layer on, and on that top layer, if we grab an eraser, and let's get a big eraser, something like 1,000 pixels right there, and that gives us a nice big pixel. I'm going to erase the darker version in the front right around her, and look what happens. Look at that. Is that like awesome or what? And there we go. We got the girl here with the right size to match the background. We got the perspective going on properly. She's got the right shadows that she's supposed to have down here. And then she's got the brightness of the background that highlights her a little bit better than it was before. So this is it for this tutorial. Hey, don't forget to like and subscribe. This is Rich, calling it quits, saying over and out.